Martell Holt loses it after Melody's shocking connection with Hill Harper. Revealed, Martell Holt has always been a man who wears his emotions on his sleeve. But lately, the fire in his eyes has been impossible to miss. Something shifted fast, and it all traces back to name, Hill Harper. The moment Martell found out about Melody's secret link to the actor and author, everything changed. But it wasn't just about who Hill Harper is. It was what that connection meant that had Martell pacing rooms and losing sleep. For people outside the circle, it might seem random. Hill Harper, the eloquent, polished intellectual, and Melody, whose life has always been more layered than people realize. It didn't immediately scream drama, but for Martell, it landed like a sucker punch. This wasn't just some casual friend she bumped into at an event. This was deeper, hidden, and worst of all, kept from him. Martell's issue wasn't just about the connection itself. It was about not knowing, about not being told, about finding out, through whispers and cryptic social media clues rather than straight from Melody. That's what stung. This wasn't the first time Martell's trust had been tested, but this time it felt different. It wasn't just betrayal. It was layered with strategy. And that's where things start getting messy. From the outside looking in, Melody's been building her independence. She's no stranger to navigating public eyes, private pressure, and personal reinvention. But when word got around that she and Hill had been in close contact, exchanging ideas, holding private meets, texting late into the night, it left everyone wondering what exactly was going on behind closed doors. Friends started picking sides. Martell wasn't just angry, he was hurt deeply. He found out about the whole thing through a friend of a friend type situation, which made it feel even worse. Someone casually mentioned Hill's name in connection with Melody, and Martell, confused, brushed it off until the same name came up again and again. The dots started connecting, and when he finally confronted Melody, her vague answers only made things worse. She didn't deny the connection. She didn't clarify it either. To someone like Martell, that silence was an answer. He saw it as a sign that there was more going on than anyone was admitting. And the worst part? Hill Harper didn't exactly stay in the background. He tried, from what people close to the situation say, to play the peacemaker, reaching out, talking, even attempting to explain himself. But instead of diffusing things, it just lit the match even hotter. Oh, Martell wasn't looking for explanations. He was looking for loyalty. Meanwhile, the rumors weren't staying quiet. Social media picked up the scent and ran with it. Cryptic posts, deleted captions, passive-aggressive comments from mutual friends. Everything was suddenly under a microscope. People began speculating if Melody and Hill were more than just talking. Was it emotional, strategic, romantic? No one could say for sure. And Martell wasn't offering clarity. It was just pissed. The drama hit a boiling point during a private gathering when Martell openly confronted Melody in front of others. According to multiple sources, voices were raised. Words like betrayal, dishonesty, and disrespect were thrown around. It was no longer just a quiet issue. It became a full-blown public fracture. And in the middle of it all, Melody stood her ground. Calm, almost too calm. What exactly was going on between her and Hill Harper? Why didn't she tell Martell from the start? She hiding something or just protecting something personal? Those are the questions no one seems able to answer. But one thing's clear. Whatever it is, it's shaken Martell to his core. And the real story is just getting started. The more Martell tried to piece things together, the more tangled everything became. It wasn't just that Melody had kept something from him. It was the way people around him suddenly started acting like they knew something he didn't. Conversations got quiet when he entered the room. Friends who were once loyal started acting distracted, like they were all part of a play he wasn't cast in. That's when Martell started digging deeper. And what he found out made everything worse. Turns out the connection between Melody and Hill Harper wasn't recent. It went back months, maybe even a year, and it wasn't just some occasional text or industry talks. Insiders say Melody had been leaning on Hill for support during one of the roughest periods in her life. Emotionally, professionally, and maybe even strategically. They weren't just bonding over life's struggles, they were building something. What that something is, that's still unclear. But the emotional closeness was undeniable. And here's the twist Martell didn't see coming. Hill wasn't the only one involved. There was talk of a third person in the mix, someone respected in their shared circle, someone with pull. That's when whispers about a strategic alliance started making the rounds. It wasn't just Melody and Hill venting to each other. They were, allegedly, working on something bigger. Something Martell had no clue about until it was already in motion. That's what really set him off. The idea that two people he knew, one he once loved and the other he had never even seen as a threat, might be collaborating behind his back. Not just emotionally, but professionally too. He wasn't just out of the loop, he was being boxed out. Close friends say Martell felt like the rug had been yanked from under him. He started questioning everything. Was he just another name in the narrative Melody was rewriting? Was Hill stepping into roles Martell used to fill, not just personally, but in influence and presence? It was more than jealousy. It was a full-on identity crisis. And the silence from Melody didn't help. While she wasn't exactly flaunting the connection, she wasn't denying it either. Her public posts became more polished, more self-assured. Some saw a woman stepping into her power. Martell, someone erasing the past, rewriting history, and doing it all while smiling for the cameras. Meanwhile, Hill Harper kept things professional on the outside. He didn't respond to the online noise, no public statements, no cryptic tweets. But insiders claim he was more involved than he let on, that he had in fact played a subtle role in guiding Melody's decisions from the background, that he was giving her advice on how to control the narrative, protect her image, and navigate the industry better than ever before. That's what drove Martell over the edge. The idea that his own story was being edited by someone who hadn't been there through the blood and sweat. Someone who didn't know what it took to build that life. Someone who, in Martell's eyes, was, now, benefiting from his pain. The result, a fracture in their entire circle. People were forced to pick sides. Some saw Martell as emotionally reactive, unable to accept change. Others believed he had every right to be furious, that what Washa painting wasn't just unfair, it was calculated. And through it all, Martell stopped talking. Not publicly, not to the media, not even to some of his closest people. He pulled back, watching, listening, waiting, because no, he didn't just want answers. He wanted the truth. And maybe even a little revenge. Melody sat alone in her living room, phone buzzing with messages she had no intention of answering. Screenshots, assumptions, interviews taken out of context. It was all spiraling. But for her, this wasn't chaos. It was clarity. The lines had been drawn, and for once, she wasn't the one standing in the shadows. He'd spent too long walking on eggshells around Martell's moods, expectations, his version of loyalty. That when she found someone like Hill, someone who listened, without judgment, and offered guidance without control, she held on to it quietly, privately, maybe too privately. But Melody wasn't trying to hide a romance. This wasn't about intimacy in the way people were assuming. It was about finally having someone who didn't see her as someone to fix, but as someone to empower. Hill gave her confidence when Martell gave her doubt. And while Martell saw betrayal, Melody saw survival. Still, she never expected it to explode like this. Martell wasn't just angry. He was unraveling, making calls, digging into Hill's background, spreading quiet warnings to mutuals. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was trying to burn it down. Not because he was heartbroken, but because he felt powerless. For a man like Martell, losing control of the narrative felt like losing himself. Meanwhile, Hill stayed silent. That silence said everything. It wasn't weakness. was calculated distance. He wasn't about to be dragged into someone else's emotional mess. And maybe that's what made Martell even angrier. Hill wasn't engaging, wasn't reacting. He was just there. Calm, untouchable, respected. The fallout was brutal. People who once shared dinners and group chats now avoided eye contact. Events turned awkward. Some friends tried to play neutral, but neutrality in this mess felt like betrayal too. Everyone was waiting to see who would speak first, who would break, but no one did. It was a Cold War in full swing. And then came the final blow. Martell's private voice note leaked. A raw emotional rant, not staged, not strategic, just pain. He talked about how he gave everything to people who took him for granted. How he built foundations others now danced on like stages. How trust wasn't just broken, it was crushed. The clip went viral. Fans debated every sentence. Was it emotional in disguise, or the honest breakdown of a man who lost everything at once? Melody stayed quiet, not because she was guilty, but because she was exhausted. She didn't want to win the argument.